Yes, sir. We can start, sir. Good morning,
You can
everyone.
start. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr.
Uh, Today, Venkatrao sir will be taking class. Professor Venkatrao sir will be taking class for you all. So, just want you to listen to his class attentively. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Karthik, you do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Just introduce me because I it doesn't look nice if I myself have to introduce.
Okay. Okay.
Because nobody asked me any biodata or any nothing.
This is fine, sir.
Okay, just
Uh,
VK Agarwal asked me just to
yes,
make
sir.
a presentation. That's all.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Uh, Professor Venkatrao has done his PG in Applied Sciences from Andhra University, and he has 30 years experience in Indian remote sensing satellite program, and he's also been a system engineer in electro-optical systems in satellite technology and a project management. Then he's been a project director for two operational
Remote sensing.
projects. Yes, sir. That is Ocean Satellite 2 and Resource Satellite 2, and recipient of ISRO Merit Award, the Team Leader Award, and Astronomical Society of India Award for the space system and management. So, uh, request everyone to listen to uh, Professor Venkat Rao very carefully, and if you have any doubts regarding any of the topic, uh, ask without any hesitation. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Karthik. Thank you. Good morning to all. Actually, I am going to cover the following topics in the next four lectures. Actually, not today only. Today, I just will give some introduction type of things and some applications, remote sensing applications, and then subsequently, I will be covering the basics of remote sensing technology and the two types of optical remote sensing and microwave remote sensing. And in my last lecture, I'll be covering other satellite payloads actually. See, famous Greek philosopher Socrates in 450 BC itself, he predicted that man must rise above the earth to the top of the atmosphere and space. For only then he will be fully understand the world in which he lives. Okay, that's what he predicted that time itself. So accordingly, the subsequently, in the 19th century onwards, 20th century onwards, we started space exploration. Coming to just types of satellites, you all know that there are different types of satellites are flown into the space for various applications. Like for example, I have given few examples here. Uh, Communication satellites, okay, like our own ISRO's INSAT and GSAT series. Earth observation satellites, that is Indian remote sensing satellite, and Sentinel is a French satellite, Landsat by NASA. So many satellites are flown for Earth observations. Then meteorological payloads for atmospheric studies, environment and all. That is same INSAT satellites. In some of the INSAT satellites, we have flown this particular instrument, very high resolution radiometer, VHRR. And in USA, NOAA conducts a regular launch of satellites for meteorological studies. And navigation satellites, you all know, GPS is well known. And we have now Indian regional navigation satellite system, RNSS, NAVIC, okay, and GLONASS by Russia, so many Galileo by Europe, so many constellation of satellites are there for navigation purpose. And then, of course, there are some interplanetary missions for scientific studies like Chandrayaan. We have flown Chandrayaan 1, 2, then Mars Orbital mission, etc. They're all for scientific and particular planet studies. Then there are scientific payloads, scientific satellites like Hubble Space Telescope, and ISRO launched a few years back AstroSat for study of space-related features. Then, of course, basically the space station itself is a satellite, okay, going around the Earth. For so many years, it's an operational system. And the latest development is the nano satellites, CubeSat, okay, small satellites. And these type of satellites are realized by student community universities all over the globe. And in India also, so far, about 10 satellites were realized and launched by various engineering colleges and universities. ISRO has launched them free of cost. Apart from these things, there are satellites for strategic applications, for defense applications. Okay, of course, they are kept normally as a secret, but they are also a series of satellites they launch for their strategic applications. So basically, if you divide these things, they come under three series: communication, meteorological satellites, INSAT, like Kalpana. All these satellites are come under navigation, meteorology. These satellites are normally launched into geostationary orbit. I will explain later. And the other series are all Earth observation, remote sensing satellites. And in my talk, I am going to cover mainly on these things. This will be covered separately by somebody. And space science and planetary, Chandrayaan, Astrosat, and then small satellites by student satellites. Pratham by Pune, IIT Pune, Jugnu, not IIT Pune, Engineering College Pune, Jugnu by IIT Kanpur. Like that, many university satellites are also flown. So basically, a satellite is an ensemble of several subsystems designed to meet a common goal. There will be a mission goal. What is the idea? What is the purpose of the satellite? That is the goal. So all the satellites are designed to meet that goal, and they have to work in unison. Okay. And any satellite consists of two major elements. One is a payload system, other is a mainframe system. Okay. This mainframe system, what we call the satellite bus. Okay. So it consists of structural elements, thermal control under mechanical systems, thermal control system, then deployment mechanisms, etc. Under electrical systems, you have electrical power system, onboard computer, attitude and orbit control system was covered by Dr. Malik, and communication systems. Okay, these are all electrical systems. So all these are basically come under the bus. This bus is designed to support the payload. That is the main thing you have to keep it in mind. Always the bus systems are designed to support the payload requirement. What is payload requirement? If you come to payload, of course, you have communication payload, remote sensing, navigation, meteorology, scientific, astronomical, different types of payloads are there. So I will be concentrating mainly on the payloads. The bus systems will be covered separately. One more thing you have to keep it in mind is the mechanical, the satellite is a multidisciplinary system. Always it is not a single, it is, it requires expertise from various fields of science and engineering and technology. Like for example, mechanical engineering, you need experts in structural design, static dynamic load analysis using finite element analysis, vibration model analysis, fabrication techniques, and dealing with fiber reinforced plastic materials, and thermal control. You need thermodynamics analysis, etc. Coming to electronics and communication engineering, you have, of course, today electronics is a very vast subject. It encompasses from DC to daylight. So power electronics, digital electronics, design with microprocessors, FPGAs, circuit design, PCB design, software coding. Of course, this is nowadays all students are trained already. And then you go to RF electronics, antenna design, okay, and payload expertise. Some of the team in any given project, they have to be trained in as a payload experts. And coming to computer science and information technology, software coding of algorithms, code walkthrough, ground test methods, mission operations. After launch, satellite launch, you have to operate from the ground station. Okay, so a lot of software is required for sending commands. Then whatever data is received from satellite, that has to be processed on ground. Then network management. You have multiple ground stations. Actually, not one. All over the globe, there will be ground stations, and they have to be connected together. Okay, so everything is now computerized. So this is software. Okay, this type of software have to be developed. And then chemical engineers, there are a lot of material science will be there in satellite. Then electrochemical treatments, propellants. Okay, for thrusters and all, propellants are used. What type of propellant, chemical propellants, their properties, that has to be studied. And applied mathematics in terms of orbital mechanics, flight dynamics, lot of computations, mathematical computations will be there. Okay, so where of course other engineers also can do it, but then of course the most important is system engineers. Okay, you need system engineers. Some other team. If you Dayana Sagar University wants to launch a satellite, you form a team of experts, engineers. So in that, some have to be trained like system engineers. They have to take care of the overall satellite configuration management, interface control, and all those things. Coming to Earth observation satellites, which I am going to concentrate more on my next few topics. Uh, the basically the observation satellites, they carry optical or microwave instruments as payload. I will explain what is payload. See, these imaging payloads, there are two types actually, imaging and non-imaging. Imaging means they take pictures of Earth features in different resolutions. I will explain again later. Used for various applications like agriculture, forestry, urban planning, water resources. There are a host of applications. Whereas non-imaging payloads, the observation of atmospheric parameters like temperature, humidity, polluting gases, ocean winds, etc., etc. This is mainly for atmospheric studies, weather forecasting, that type of things. Mostly these Earth observation satellites are launched into LEO orbits. That means low Earth orbit. Any orbits normally below 1,000 kilometers from Earth, they are referred as LEO orbits. And against geostationary orbit. Geostationary is at a distance of 36,000 kilometers, okay, from the Earth. And these Earth observation satellites provide operational services. That is most important actually. That means they have to provide continuous service. It's not a one-time experiment or anything. Okay, regularly they use, for example, crop monitoring. In India, Ministry of Agriculture, they continuously monitor the crop, for example, wheat, rice, so various crops. Okay, how is the forecast? What will be the production and all that. Change detection. Okay, any change, any urban area where earlier whatever was there that has developed into after a few years, what is the change? Then weather, climate, and continuous basis. See, they just going through the evolution of these Earth observation satellites. As early as in 1972, NASA was first launched the satellite called Landsat. Okay, that is the first Earth observation satellites to provide global coverage. That time itself, they have envisaged to cover the entire globe. In fact, their idea was to study the global food production. How is the food production? Where is the drought? Where is shortage? Where is excess? That to study that they have started, and this is a series actually. They have launched almost the Landsat 8 up to 8. They have launched. Landsat 9 is getting ready for launch now. Then followed by that, ISRO launched these two satellites, Bhaskara 1 and Bhaskara 2. In 1979, Bhaskara 1 and 81, Bhaskara 2. Okay. Of course, these were, we called them as experimental satellite initially. And of course, this carried a television camera and a microwave payload. Two payloads this each satellite carried. And Bhaskara, of course, these two satellites gave very good experience to ISRO scientists and engineers in terms of how to take pictures of Earth, and then once you get the picture, how to interpret, how to study, how to derive information, all that experience it gave. So based on this experience, the Indian remote sensing satellite IRS-1A, that was launched in 1988, that was the first operation satellites. Followed by that, till now, almost 40 Earth observation satellites were launched by ISRO till now. And recently, this is of course, this is the latest trend now. A constellation of about 200 small satellites, less than 5 kg, were launched by Planet Labs. This is a small company in San Francisco to image any area within few hours. Okay, so many satellites are going around the Earth, so they go on taking pictures of Earth. So one satellite takes, within few hours, another satellite will come same area and take pictures. Okay, that type of things they are doing now. Today, demand is more for high resolution images for events, media, strategic applications, and infrastructure development. Apart from operational, of course, they have their own applications. But other than that, the commercial market is going towards this high resolution. For example, recent events in Afghanistan, that type of things, they are taken by high resolution satellite images, and they have a high demand in the media. They want immediately what is the information developments and all. Of course, this small miniaturization is mainly because of technological developments like this. See, you initially the satellites, okay, ISRO also, even today, of course, even some of the satellites, they use the discrete printed circuit boards with components, different resistors, capacitors, okay, all these components. So they will be huge actually. Whereas later it was converted into a hybrid microcircuit HMC. Okay, it will come into a small package. Many of these components are put, and this is realized as a single component. Then subsequently, system in package, a single package, single IC will have many functions. It will cater to many functions. And then system on chip, three-dimensional systems, 3D systems have come. Okay, whole system will be put into this. Okay, this will, for example, a power system, or of course some systems need extra components, but otherwise this is type of developments. And parallelly, the micro electromechanical systems, the MEMS, okay, MEMS devices, they have become very popular and they are used in satellites also. Of course, this is as part of electronics. And coming to optical, you see, there are smartphones, very small cameras, very powerful cameras, but small cameras are developed. That is because of very small lenses. The optics is miniaturized and put into this smartphones. So everything is getting miniaturized, and the size weight of the satellites is coming down. Coming to types of payloads, see, there are, of course, as I explained, communication payloads, which cover transponders, data relay transponders, search and rescue operations. Okay, this type of payload, this will be covered separately. And meteorological payload, optical micro radiometers, sounders, mainly to study the atmospheric parameters. Earth observation payloads, land, oceans, atmospheric observations, and of course, space science for study of astronomical objects, phenomena, etc. Now, fundamental question is, what is payload actually? We are referring so many times payload, but what is a payload? The payload is examples. See, for a missile, the warhead is the payload. Okay, for a missile. For an aircraft, if it is a passenger aircraft, number of passengers it can carry is the payload. If it is a cargo flight, what is the maximum cargo it can carry? That is the payload. Similarly, for a rocket, okay, for a PSLV, GSLV, what is the satellite? Okay, satellite put here, okay, that is a payload for rocket. It has to launch that, take the satellite to space and launch it into the orbit. Okay, that is a payload for the rocket. Whereas for a satellite, the instrument, okay, the mission, what is the mission purpose of the mission? Whether it is a communication, remote sensing, science, whatever it is, that instrument is called the payload. That is, so whenever we refer payload, payload is one instrument or a set of 2-3 instruments, whatever it is. But the main purpose of the satellite, that has to work. Even the satellite may work, it has to work. But if payload doesn't work, the mission is gone. So that is the importance of payload. See, in any satellite design, the payload will be the driver, design driver of other systems. As I mentioned earlier, the bus systems, payload will be the design driver. How? See, for example, if you take structure, mechanical structure of the satellite structure, payload must be firmly held onto the platform. Okay, that means suppose you have a camera, you mount it on the structure. The structure, the satellite will go through vibration during launch and all that. So it has to withstand. There should not be any disturbance in the lens alignment or anything. So it should be firmly held. Payload must be pointed to the required direction. Suppose you want to take pictures of Earth. So satellite camera has to be oriented towards the Earth and stable. It should not have move here and there. So that is the function of AOS. Of course, some are referring ADCS. AOCS and ADCS both are same. If you control orbit also, it is referred as the attitude and orbit control system. Otherwise, it is the attitude determination and control system. Okay, but functions are more or less same. Data from payload must reach ground station. Once you take picture of the Earth, the data has to be sent to the ground. So you need a radio frequency communication system. Powering of payload. Payload basically electrical systems. So you have to power it. Okay, you have to do required supply voltage, current, and all that. So that is met by power system. Temperature maintenance and cooling, heating requirements. See, some of the cameras, their temperature is need to be controlled very 20 plus minus 5 degrees like that. The specifications will be there. That has to be maintained by the thermal control system. And a payload to be operated and its health monitored. See, payload, first of all, once you have to switch on the payload in orbit. Okay, from the ground you have to give a command, telecommand, payload on command. After some time you have to payload off. Then the data has to be sent down. That is telemetry. It's health also. Not only telemetry, not only payload health, all other satellite subsystems, their temperature, voltage, currents, all the data will be sent through the telemetry. So basically, as I explained, I will just show a few slides to give an idea of what type of orbits, and mainly for Earth observation, what type of orbits we use. See, most of the communication, navigation, and meteorological payloads, etc., they are put in geostationary orbits, okay, which will be at a distance of about 36,000 kilometers. And these orbits are in the equatorial plane. See, this is the Earth's equator. In the same plane from Earth's surface, they will be at a distance of 36,000 kilometers. So basically, what happens? The Earth is rotating in this lake. Okay. So whatever Earth rotation, 24 hours, it makes one revolution. So the satellite also makes same. So for a given place, it looks as if it is stationary. Okay. So both are moving synchronously. So it will be always will be there in the on that portion. That's why for our DTH, direct to home satellite TV, you need a fixed antenna. You don't need to turn the antenna. On the rooftop, that antenna is fixed to one direction, so it is always it will receive the data. Whereas in for Earth observation, you go for polar orbits. Okay, that is it covers over the poles. Okay, North Pole, South Pole, it will go over the poles. Little, of course, with a little inclination. Okay. So I will just show further on this. See, for example, here animation, you see, this is how the Earth observation satellites will go. Okay. And because Earth is rotating, so it will image different parts of the Earth at a different in different orbits. It is not same. Okay. So that I will explain in the next slide. This is typically a geostationary satellite where it covers, it is going exactly same way. For this point, it is always seen. Yeah, this is just a basic just to explain how the satellite goes around the Earth. Just basic question. So to demonstrate that, we will take a case where, suppose hypothetically you take one gun barrel, okay, cannon, above the atmosphere, about 100, 200 kilometers above, let us say, okay, and first you fire one bullet. Let us say with a ejection velocity of 2 kilometers per second. If you just fire the gun, then what will happen? That bullet will fall here only. Okay, at some distance it will fall, following the loss of projectiles. You have studied projectiles. Same thing if you fire with a 6 kilometers per second. Okay, so it will fall at a slightly distance away, further away. But if you fire this bullet with a velocity of approximately about 7.5 to 8 kilometer in that range, okay, then what happens? It will take a path which is almost parallel to the Earth's curvature. Okay, it goes, and it goes on like that. Okay, it just it revolves around the Earth in this orbit, okay, forever. But thing is, it's not that. The basic condition for this is, see, you have the gravitational force, okay, attracting towards the center of the Earth. Any object, okay, it will attract towards the center of the Earth. So because of this velocity, okay, there is you are rotating, there will be a centrifugal acceleration, okay, which is in this direction, away from that. One is centripetal or the centrifugal type of thing. So both should balance actually. Both will balance, so that the satellite will go on going like this. But of course, it's the ideal case. But practically what happens is the Earth's gravity dominates as well as other forces. So basically, the satellite will be slowly come towards the Earth actually. The orbit will change. So once in a while, we have to use the thrusters on the satellite, fire them, and again push back to the original orbit. Okay. So basically this velocity is 7.5 kilometers per second. You can derive for any orbit the altitude, okay, the altitude radius r, let us say, okay, based on this height up to almost, I said, 1,000 kilometers, 500 to 1,000 kilometers is all Leo orbits. So whatever orbit you want, you can calculate the velocity with this formula, square root of gravitational constant into mass of the Earth divided by r. Okay, r is you put to 600 kilometers. You will get what is the velocity for 600 or 700, 800, whatever orbit you want, you can calculate. So here I just want to introduce some parameters. What happens? This is the orbit. Okay, satellite is put in this orbit. Satellite is going in like this. This is the equator. So actually, even though we call it, we call actually near polar, we don't call polar orbit, near polar. So it is slightly away from the pole with an angle of 98.2 degrees. Okay, we call it inclination. So with respect to the equator, the orbital plane, you take the orbital plane, so the angle is 98.2 degrees in this case. So that is the inclination. And the height, in this case, let us say 705 kilometers, is the altitude. So with a combination of this altitude and inclination, you can have different orbits. Okay. For example, the requirement is when it I will come later, sun synchronous orbit. So basically, what we call the local time. That means when the satellite is coming from North Pole to South Pole, okay, then the sun will be coming at an angle from outside the screen. Let us say assume at an angle. Okay, that is the sun vector. That is illuminating. For example, for us, let us say morning 10 o'clock. Okay, so you will have sun at some angle 30 degrees also. So that will be illuminating this area. No, the satellite will be able to take images. Whereas in the other side, this dotted line, this other side of the globe, because sun is this side, that is dark. For example, it is for us it is a daytime. For US it is night time. That type of thing. So dark you cannot take image, particularly in optical. Microwave and all I will come later. That you can take. So in this, what happens is this is a sun synchronous orbit. Actually, previous one I will tell one thing. See, Earth is actually not very spherical. Here near the equator, it will be bulging. Actually, there will be a bulge at the equator. So what happens when the satellite is going like this? Here and other side, when it comes nearer to the equator, it is closer to Earth because the Earth surface becomes bulgy. And here also. Whereas poles, it is slightly away from the Earth. So what happens is this side attraction is more because of gravity. So effectively there will be a torque giving onto the orbit. So orbit, what happens is orbit rotates, precession, we call it precession. So orbit, now this orbit, next day it will come like this here. This point will come here. Next day it will come here. It will be like moving like this. Okay. So if you control by selecting these two, altitude and inclination, you control such that this precision is approximately 0.98 degrees per day. Okay. So see Earth makes one revolution around the sun in 365 days. Okay. So that means in 365 days, 360 degrees in 365 days. So that is 0.98 degree per day. So that same this orbital plane rotation, if you adjust to that, what happens is the sun illumination every day it will be same angle it will make, so that the illumination is more or less constant irrespective of the seasons. Okay, you have winter solstice or equinox, both the places, the illumination will be same. That is the main idea. Most of the optical satellite, remote sensing satellites are put in the sun synchronous orbit. Why sun synchronous orbit for remote sensing? Sun synchronous orbit, angle between sun vector and orbital plane is constant. So this ensures near constant illumination of ground features. Very important for optical imaging. Change direction. See, for example, you want to study the agriculture. Okay, crop, right from the starting, okay, till harvesting, the crop color will be changing, okay, over a period of 3 months or 4 months. So you have to detect that in different colors. So, but the illumination should be constant. Then only, suppose the illumination also changes. You don't know whether the change is because of illumination or a crop change. So that's why constant illumination is required. Then local time of equatorial crossing decides inclination and illumination. In general, most of the remote sensing satellites will have a 10 a.m. to 12 noon local time. Okay, this is the most of our ISRO satellites. They are put around 10:30 like that. Except the one satellite, OceanSat, for which I was the project director. This satellite will go at 12 noon actually. I will tell later actually why. Now I will just cover the applications, because very important. Whenever you are making any mission, satellite mission, okay, there should be a user and data should be used. So what are the applications of these Earth observation satellites. I just cover. See, remote sensing satellite, you will have so many projects, even in government of India. Okay, so all the ministries, most of the ministries, they use the remote sensing satellite. Normally, for a communication satellite, INSAT, GSAT, and all, the data utility is mainly for communications, TV broadcasting. Okay, that type of applications, few applications will be there. Whereas the remote sensing data will be used by, for example, Ministry of Rural Development. They use for groundwater prospecting. Rajiv Gandhi drinking water mission. They have dug so many borewells all over the country. So first they see which areas are groundwater is there. Then wasteland mapping and monitoring. See, today wasteland they converted into useful land. Okay, and the development takes place. So for Ministry of Urban Development, you see National Urban Information Systems for any urban development, infrastructure development. Okay, all that you want to put roads or metro lines, etc. They use the satellite data for laying the route. Ministry of Water Resources, they use for irrigation infrastructure, command area monitoring, sedimentation of reservoirs, Indian Water Resource Information System, then snow melt runoff, glacial lake monitoring, river configuration, flood forecasting, water resources assessment. And a major user is, of course, Ministry of Agriculture. For they use it for crop acreage and production estimate. Okay. For a per acre, how much it will be there. Then there is a this project. It's called FASAL. That is a forecast of agricultural output using satellite and agro-meteorology data, something like that. The application is there. This is a continuous running project of Ministry of Agriculture. They continuously forecast the food production. Then agricultural drought monitoring. Uh, am I audible? Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm asking late actually. Karthik?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Agricultural drought monitoring and horticulture, etc. You have any doubts, you can ask me also, no problem. Then Ministry of Home Affairs, they use it, of course, for disaster management is one main thing. Any disaster anywhere in the country, okay, there is I'll show next another slide. It is continuously there is a monitoring. Okay, so centers are there, monitoring centers are there. So all the state governments will be we will inform, okay, about any disaster and through satellite data like flood. Okay, and this is national disaster event monitoring. Drought, any areas drought, landslides, etc. Ministry of Environmental and Forest, they use it for forest cover. Okay, a lot of deforestation was happening earlier, so that they identified, and then they have taken corrective actions. So biodiversity characterization and wetland mapping. Ministry of Mines, they use it for exploration for minerals. Ministry of External Affairs, of course, specific information based on mutual agreements with other countries. We provide them data, or they provide us data, some sort of mutual agreements. That also specific information will be shared. For example, here the global agricultural monitoring. This is what I was telling. Landsat, okay, as early as 1972, they were monitoring whole globe and where all the forest or vegetation is there, where wetlands are there, the type of monitoring they are doing. See, urban infrastructure development, see, for example, you want to make roads or you want to develop some areas or any new things you want to introduce. Okay, so you need see, this is a very high resolution image. Okay, so you can monitor even the waterways, water transportation, whatever it is, for various applications. So this is another image of very high resolution. This, of course, you all know, any cyclone or any major events, weather monitoring and forecasting will be monitored. Of course, this type of events will be monitored both from geostationary orbit as well as LEO orbits. Okay, which direction this cyclone is moving from, they give the forecast. Okay. This is one application, of course, I want to slightly elaborate that main, see, this is called potential fishing zones actually. See, what happens is we have the Indian land, okay, both east coast, Bay of Bengal, and west coast Arabian Sea. So there is a satellite, OceanSat, in which there is a payload called Ocean Color Monitor, OCM. So what OCM does is it takes image of actually ocean, not land. It takes images of ocean, and from that image they deduce the chlorophyll concentration. Chlorophyll is a sort of green substance which is the food for the fish actually. So they see where all chlorophyll concentrations are there, okay, and that data they put it, and in they also take the sea surface temperature. Okay, earlier we were taking from other satellites, the NASA satellites. Now we are having our own data. Actually, ISRO is having our own data. So combining both ocean color and sea surface temperature, they identify these concentrations and it done that's called potential fishing zones. Okay, so for example here west coast Goa coast, they will identify where are the potential fishing zones. See, red is high actually. As you go towards blue to red, the concentration is very high. So using this now, with respect to this, what they are doing is there is a center in Hyderabad called INCOIS, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Systems, INCOIS. So they do this. They give advisories every day. They send an advisory to all the ports along the west coast and east coast. Okay, whatever ports up to Bay of Bengal, West Bengal, all the ports. Okay, in Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, this side Gujarat, Goa, everywhere. Okay. They send that information. That means for a given, for example, let's say from Goa, they will say at so and so kilometers. They in fact they give the latitude and longitude coordinates. So if you go there, you will get very good catch. Okay. That type of information they are giving. See, for example, that's what identifying PFZ. Okay, and they send through various media. They send through, they display in that port on electronic displays. Even now, even personal mobile phones, etc. They are sending the data. Okay. So just the impact of this is, you can see in this was actually in 2006-7. They made a study with the School of Economics in Delhi. They have made a study. This is non-PFZ. Without PFZ, they go earlier, they will go here and there, search here and there. If they are lucky, they will get a catch, otherwise they will come back like that. Whereas with the PFZ input, okay, this is the type of catch they got. Okay, it saved so much of search time reduced by 30 to 70%, and some millions, billions of lot of money is saved in the diesel. See, they use the diesel for the boats. So they just without blindly searching, here and there, they will be wasting fuel without getting a catch. Whereas if they go pointedly to that place, okay, so that way that also save a lot of fuel actually. So this is one very important application which is going on now. It is a continuous operational service, except during monsoon. Normally during monsoon, the fish they lay the eggs, so it is banned actually. Say fishing is banned. So except 3 months of monsoon, all other time this activity will. Another important thing is the forest fire. See, for example, this is a forest fire detection in Australia. Okay, so how much is the area damaged? They will assess from the space image, satellite image itself. They will be assessing the damage assessment, etc. And how much the pollution, what is the pollution caused by this type of things. Another is flood damage. Okay, flood damage assessment. Okay, on the standing crops particularly. For example, you say this area pre-flood and post-flood. You see, this is a river, Indus River. So this is the area. These are all crops actually. So because of the flood, the water has flown all over here. So they said almost 10,000 acres. See, today government will take these inputs not just some figures off the cuff, the figures they give. They don't take those figures. They want a scientific analysis and results. So here also some 3,500 acres of flood damage has happened. So these are all the inputs which go to the government for estimating the what is the damage and for mitigation, etc. This is of course in 2004 tsunami in Bandayak in Indonesia. This is the original image. So after tsunami, you know how much damage has happened. Okay. Both this coast and here, a lot of damage has happened. So they estimate how much is the damage. Okay. Here even this link was cut actually. That type of estimates they do it. This is what I said for the disaster management. There is a center in National Remote Sensing Center in Hyderabad in RSC. Okay, they will be continuously monitoring. Okay, anywhere in the country, any damage, flood or landslides, cyclone, earthquake, or drought. Of course, it's over a period of time. It's not sudden, and then forest fires. This type of any events, they will be monitoring and they will do the first estimation. What is the damage? Where it exactly where it happened? All those things they estimate, and then they provide the inputs to the concerned state governments, okay, for any corrective actions, etc. Yeah. Okay. Now I'll just in the remaining part I will just give the basics of the remote sensing technology, and then cover in detail what are the methods and all that. See, what is remote sensing? Remote sensing is the science, of course, to some extent art, of acquiring information about the Earth's surface without actually being in contact with it. This is done by sensing and recording reflected or emitted energy and processing, analyzing, and applying that information. Okay, this is a technical definition of remote sensing by Canadian Center of Remote Sensing. See, as you all know, in our day-to-day, in our human body, we have remote sensors. Our eye is a remote sensor. Our ears are remote sensors. Okay, we see without any contact, we get the information. And in our day-to-day life, we see various instruments like binoculars or even camera. Okay, they are all remote sensors. Without you don't touch the object from a distance, you get the information. This is called remote sensor. But the basic thing is, how do we see objects? When the light energy falls on any object, part of it gets reflected, part of it gets transmitted, and partly absorbed. These three phenomena will happen. Okay? Any object. So, how these three phenomena are dependent? They are dependent on the physical and chemical properties of that object and the wavelength of radiation. What is the wavelength falling on that? What we are seeing actually. To give an example, for example, suppose some white light is coming. Okay, white light, if it is fully reflected, you all know that white light is a combination of RG, red, green, and blue. Okay, broadly. So if it fully reflects, that object will look to our eyes as white. And if it fully absorbs the radiation, these objects look to our eyes as black, and all others are in between, black to white. Okay, depending on the amount of energy reflected or absorbed and reflected. Okay, they look different colors. And which wavelength dominates in reflection? Okay, our eyes will see that color actually. For example, you see all the leaves, your tree leaves, plant leaves, and all that, they look to our eyes as green. Why? Because the leaves absorb blue radiation and red radiation. They absorb. Okay, they reflect only green. Because of the here also there will be a chlorophyll in the leaves, so photosynthesis, etc. So because of that, once the leaf becomes dry, the color will change. Then they turn to brown, yellow, brown, and different colors. So healthy vegetation leaves, they look green. So here also you can see this is fully absorbed. This is red is reflected here. Okay, other wavelengths are absorbed. So here everything is reflected. This is the basic principle of remote sensing. So for all space-based remote sensing, the main source of energy is the sun. Okay, the sun illuminates the earth during the daytime, And so most of the optical remote sensing is done during day, as I mentioned earlier, preferably before noon. So if you see the energy spectrum of the solar radiation, if you see, maximum radiation is within the visible and infrared range only. Maximum radiation is coming. Okay. This is the visible, approximately zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.7 micrometers is the visible range. And slightly beyond that is the infrared. Infrared, you have different zones again. Near infrared, middle infrared, thermal infrared, like that. And beyond that, you will have microwaves, radio frequencies, millimeter waves, etc. etc. It goes like that. Of course, here the energy levels are very, very low. So, because of this, most of the optical sensors work within this range. Okay, that I will cover in the next. So, once the solar radiation falls on the Earth, various features on Earth reflect or absorb radiation in different ways. For example, snow reflects very high, so that's why it is always seen as bright white. Tree leaves reflect in green and absorb blue and red. Sea and ocean water mostly absorb light and reflects low. This is the reason. See, that's why in any satellite image, if you see, the all water bodies, whether lakes, rivers, ocean, they look very black actually, okay, compared to the land. Why? Because the sun radiation, whatever is falling, most of it is absorbed actually. Okay, very small amount of radiation in blue green region only is reflected. That's why normally sea water looks to that color to our eyes. Otherwise, the energy wise, it absorbs most of the energy. So the how they are classified, okay, is by so-called spectral signatures. See here, this is the spectrum, for example, wavelengths, okay? And this is the reflectance by that object. For example, if you see agriculture, okay, this image you see, all this is green, is all green, whether it is okay, crop or forest or whatever it is, but vegetation, basically vegetation. So why? Because as I said, it absorbs. Okay, reflection is very low in the blue region as well as the red region. It is maximum reflection is in the green region. Okay, it curves goes like this. And just after red, when you go to infrared, which is not we cannot see with our eyes, but if you use infrared camera, the reflectance sharply shoots up. Okay, for all vegetation. This is the important phenomena to study the healthy vegetation. If for a crop monitoring, see suppose the crop is having get some disease. Okay, so the slowly it will the plant will die, but over a period of time. So before our eyes can detect, by when we can detect the already the plant color turns into some brownish color or something. By that time, almost it is dead. Well before that, the reflectance will come down. Okay, the normal healthy is this one. So if there is a drop in this, that means there is a problem in the crop. They take immediate actions. So that is type. For example, water, as I mentioned, water is very low. A little bit in the blue-green region, it is high. Otherwise, it falls off. Okay, that's why you see this is a river. All the water looks black. This is Manasarovar. Okay, Manasarovar lake. Okay, all the water it looks black. All the water bodies. This is all snow. Wherever snow is there, you can see white color because it reflects very high. Of course, this red, you may get confused actually. This red is nothing but green only. It is a vegetation only. Earlier in remote sensing images, they used to display as false color composite. We used to call it FCC, false color composite. Because infrared, I said we cannot see with our eyes. So infrared image, they show it in red. And red image, they show it in green. And green image, they show it in blue. One wavelength, they shift towards down. So that's all. But later, of course, we decided that it is better to show in the natural color. See, you can do basically in principle remote sensing from various, for example, ground station. You just put a high platform, okay, some platform, and you can take, or even ground, you can take a camera and go to various places and take pictures. Okay, that is one way of doing things. Otherwise, you can employ balloons or nowadays drones. Okay? You can put a camera on this drone and fly and take images. Then next is aeroplanes. Okay, survey some of the areas are surveyed using aeroplanes, and finally the satellite based. See, as you can see from this here itself, a ground you can just go a small area. Okay, you cannot go entire country type of thing. Some areas you can cover and all. Whereas a drone will cover slightly bigger area, an aeroplane will cover further bigger area, whereas satellite will cover entire globe. Okay, so that is the advantage. What are the advantages of satellite based remote sensing? Synoptic coverage, that means it covers very wide areas. Okay, entire globe. Then repeated observation, satellite, as I mentioned, it comes again and again same area. Okay, it repeats. Multispectral imaging, information in spatial domain, and there are ways of taking stereo images from a satellite by tilting the satellite. I will explain it later. Okay, there are ways you can measure the heights of mountains, etc. in this stereo. It is a timely. There is no obstruction. If you see, people can go anywhere. Cannot go some remote areas like some deep forest areas or some areas. The people cannot go and take images, whereas satellite can cover any area on the globe, and it is global to local applications. Yeah, I think with this I will stop first lecture. I will take any questions are there. Okay, I will take now. Karthik, is it okay? Hello?
Sir, any military application?
Yeah, as I mentioned, military applications are very much there. Basically, they are looking for high resolution images. They want to actually see the physical objects like various tanks or military vehicles, etc., and troop movements. So they normally prefer very high resolution image satellite data. So in fact, ISRO in India itself, it happens. It is happening, but it is normally not given much publicity. Okay, so ISRO makes satellites for defense. Nowadays, maybe in future, defense itself they want to make their own satellites. That already some steps are taken in that direction. So, for example, in USA, DoD, Department of Defense, they have their own satellite program. They launch satellites without anybody's knowledge. Many people don't know actually. They normally those satellites are launched into very low heights, about 400, 500 kilometers, so that they can take very sharp images. So that is already going on.
Sir, can we track aircrafts as well using satellites?
Can you?
Track aircrafts, helicopters?
No, actually what happens is, see, satellite is moving in the orbit. Okay, as I mentioned, the satellite is going with a velocity of 7.5 kilometers per second. Okay, such a high speed satellite is going in the orbit. So, and aircraft also is moving, okay, at some altitude, 10 kilometers or some less than 10 kilometers altitude. So there is a relative motion between these two. So within no time, the satellite will go out of the range. See, even if you have an antenna on the aircraft, okay, for a very short duration, it will go out of the field of view of the antenna. That's why we have ground antennas, ground station. For example, here Bangalore, you have that ISRO tracking and command network. And similarly, we have ground station in Hyderabad, NRSC. So that antenna is a 10-meter dish antenna. And actually one day before the control center, they will give the direct coordinates. The satellite tomorrow morning, it will come in this direction like that. So they point the antenna towards that direction. And once the satellite signal is acquired, AOS, acquisition of signal, then the antenna also rotates. There is a motor both in two directions, azimuth and elevation. So the antenna also tracks the satellite till it goes to the other side. Let us say it is coming from the north over Himalayas. and it will go for about 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes of that order. It will pass over the India, then it will go to down south. So till that time, and this antenna tracks and collects the data. So that is the advantage of ground station. Whereas in aircraft, you can't have that much of duration of visibility.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Anyone, any more questions?
Karthik, still time is there, Karthik?
Oh, yes, sir. Still time is there. If you want, you can continue, sir.
I actually I will do one thing, then I will do.
If you want,
I
you
just
can take a break if you want, sir. Or else we can.
no, I don't need any break. No problem for me. I will do one thing. I will cover the other topics also a little bit. See, anyhow, see one thing. This course I found. The name of the course is Satellite Technology you have given. Okay, so it's okay, no problem. I will just cover some other topic on satellite, related to satellite only.
So we have another 30 minutes, sir, so we can.
That's right. That's right. I just give some idea of.
Yes.
I just can you see this?
Yes, sir. We can see.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, see, anyhow, I am going to cover, as I mentioned earlier, most of the topics will be related to payload only. But now that we have some time, I will just give introduction of satellite, overall satellite. Okay, so that the subsequent sessions, maybe the concerned experts in subsystems will cover each topic. See, basically, the satellite configuration. Okay, configuration means satellite, design. Basically, how it will get evolved. See, as I mentioned, of course, before that, one more slide I want to show. See, first of all, how do you make a satellite? Okay? If your DSU wants to make a satellite, let us say, how you make it? How to go about it? So first, of course, you have to define a set of user requirement. What you want to do? Okay, this may be for commercial, but in general, even if for a university satellite, what you want to do? You want to study some atmospheric study, some pollution, okay, or India you want to study, or you want to study the coastal areas. Okay? What is the coastal erosion is happening? That type of things, anything you want to do, that you define first. That is the mission objective. Next is to do that. Okay, what you want? What type of payload you want? You want a camera? You want some other temperature sensor? What is that you want? That you define, and then orbit and what is the technology related for that. Then you for this meeting this payload, what are the technology satellite requirements? Okay, then you design the satellite systems, as I mentioned, thermal structure, all satellite systems you have to design. Of course, you have to parallelly the launch vehicle and the ground segment. Okay, that also you have to evolve. So these are all called mission requirements. What the payload means, what whether it is a transponder or what exactly the payload, what is the technology, what is the orbit you want to put the satellite. Then launch vehicle availability of cost. Of course, for student satellites, normally ISRO gives free of cost to launch. Okay, on PSLV, they launch free for student satellites. Then what is the ground segment, user tables, etc. This of course I have covered. This also I have covered. But this is a typical structure. You have to define who is the project director and system engineers and all that. These are all the functions of project team. Okay, preparation of a project report, starting with the preparation, then satellite you have to evolve, then configuration management and control. System engineering is very important. And once you start, of course, these are all how the progress and all that. So here, payload configuration to finalize, including its parameters and specifications. And of course, this is we made a very different this thing. You can either buy a satellite. Okay, today, CubeSat, for example, there is a small satellite called CubeSat. It is readily available actually. You students, if they don't have time and budget for developing, okay, they can just buy one CubeSat and then put the small payload on that and launch it. Okay, you give it to ISRO and you launch it. That is also possible. And the subsystem designs, as I mentioned earlier, it is driven by payload, and you have to do a lot of trade-off studies and major specifications, etc. And of course, any satellite project will go through reviews. That is very important. Baseline review, preliminary design review. So many other reviews will be there at the various stages of the satellite. You have to go through. Of course, the satellite configuration you evolve. Okay, it's not just 1 day design or 2 day design. Slowly you evolve. You first make one baseline, then go through discussions. What are the problems in that design? Okay, like that. In some cases, you make a small breadboard prototype, test it whether it works or not. Okay, that type of things you have to do. Then one engineering model. Okay, all electrical working functional model you have to make. Then once this is tested and cleared, then you start manufacturing the flight model satellite. Then of course this is all required details. Okay. All details you have to document it. See, this is another, of course, this is yeah, system engineering basically is another important field actually. Wherever you go, which after your studies, wherever you join industry or anywhere, there will be a system engineering requirement. Okay, as the most important job. There will be many specialists. Okay, for every field, but one has to look, at the overall system, how it works, what is going on. If you change one system, what is its impact on the other system? Okay, like that. So basically, in a satellite project, you have three driving forces. One is the performance. Okay? Everybody will say, I want the best performance. The satellite should work and it should give good data. Then the other management says you do it at the lowest cost possible. Okay? And you do it at the earliest possible schedule. Okay? These three will be pulling in three different directions. So aerospace systems like satellites are more complex, and the space projects often compete, okay, between cost, schedule. Continuous and close monitoring of the progress of the project while keeping the mission goals in mind is the main responsibility of system engineer. He has to continuously monitor what is happening, okay, any problem is there, okay, and whether that will delay any problem will delay the overall schedule, okay, and any cost impact. Like that, he has to do the monitoring. So for that, he should have some qualities. He should be a system engineer, should have T knowledge in subsystem. What is T? T is, see, today you have various branches of engineering. So if you have opted, let us say, for electronics and communication engineering, you studied that subject very deep. Okay, you have good knowledge. So this is a vertical. You have depth of knowledge in your field, whatever your field is, mechanical engineering or civil, whatever. But nevertheless, you should have surface knowledge of all systems in the satellite. Okay, even though you are electronics, you should know something. You should understand what is the mechanical, okay, what for it is done, what is structure, how it is designed. Some understanding, okay, basic understanding should be there. And the multidisciplinary teamwork. You will have in the project, you have a big team, okay, where various designers are developing various systems, power, telemetry, telecommand, so many system design. So the system engineer has to coordinate with all of them, and he should have a leadership and practical. And he should know fundamental design guidelines, functionality of each subsystem, how it works, okay, what for it is there, each subsystem in the satellite. By and what of each specification. Okay, you have a lot of specifications for every subsystem. Power, it is what is the power generation? 800 watts. Why 800 watts? Okay. Like that, he should understand. Interface knowledge, analysis and compatibility checking. This is also very important between two subsystems. Okay, what is the interface? Suppose one interface once from the power system, that has to supply power to, let us say, some other subsystem. So it has to give the correct voltage and correct the current capacity, whether it is giving or not. All those things have to be checked by system engineer. And he should also have knowledge about current trends and developments. See, this is what interface control definition. Okay. Multi-systems which are developed by different teams need to be integrated on satellite. Mechanical and electrical interfaces between subsystems and satellite to be well defined and documented. Interface control document is an important document, and a mismatch at final stages, it will have a major impact on schedule. See, suppose two systems, let us say one subsystem, they bring it to the satellite integration. When you connect, the connector will not match. The connector, some different types of connectors are used. Okay, so the it cannot be integrated. So then you have to take it back, change the connector, again test it. It will have major impact. Okay, so well ahead, you should do this interface management, handshake. Okay, that is the job of a system engineer. See, for example, what are the interfaces? No, see, mechanical. You should have correct when you are mating two systems. Mechanically, you are connecting them. No, what type of interface is there? The size of the nut bolts, what is the diameter, hole all those things, very clearly should be defined in drawings. Then thermal, when you put a satellite as a subsystem, what type of interface is there in the between satellite deck and subsystem? Then electrical connector. See, this is a, for example, you one side they use a plug, the other side you use a socket. Otherwise, both if they use plug, it will not mate at all. Similarly, power, I told, okay, from a DC-DC converter, 5 volts, -5, what are the voltages, what are the currents? Then signal interface, what is the frequency, what is the timing, okay, like that. Formats, different types of data formats, international format, all those things they have to be checked by system engineer. And another important thing, see, this is a satellite, okay. See, the satellite will have axis. Normally we call it a roll. You are all aerospace engineers. You must be knowing roll pitch yaw. Okay, so similar to roll pitch yaw definition will be there, axis definition. Normally this is the velocity in the orbit. When satellite is going, it goes in this direction, roll velocity. And yaw is always towards the earth. Normally this camera, it will point towards the earth. And other direction is pitch. So the axis definition between various agencies, there should be a clear understanding. For example, X, Y, Z. Okay, this is X, Y, Z. They are the axis defined by satellite team. And XC, YC, ZC. This X is actually it is not X, Y. Y, for example, Y for satellite is Z for launch vehicle fellow. They have defined like that. So, unless it is very clearly understood in the beginning, if you take the satellite and go to launch vehicle, it will not sit on the launch vehicle. That type of confusion or communication gap should not be there. Similarly, error probability. See, Mr. Malik explained you the attitude control system, ADCS. With a sensor, okay? Sensors measure the attitude error. They give the error input to the controller. Then control will give the signals, okay? Correcting signals to either a torquer, magnetic torquer, or reaction wheels, okay? Or control thrusters, RCS thrusters, etc. to control that error. How that error is defined there should be a common understanding. Okay, if you plus error is taken as minus error, even a small sign convention can create havoc. Okay, so that is for example, normally you follow the right hand thumb rule. You point your thumb to that axis, roll axis or pitch axis. So the direction of the fingers is positive error. Okay, like this, and opposite is negative error. So that sensor, whether it is plus roll error or minus roll error, should go with the correct polarity to control system. Then only control system will correct. Okay, will either accelerate or decelerate the wheel to correct it. if there is a mismatch, that then it will instead of correcting, it will further increase that error. So this type of understanding and documentation is very, very important. One more thing is, of course, the design aspects. If you see, for a mission, for any given mission, okay, when you are designing a satellite, there are a lot of constraints. Actually, you don't have freedom of whatever you want to do. Design you cannot do, because you have to optimize the weight, volume, and power. Okay, because the satellite size is defined, and because that satellite size depends on the launch vehicle. Okay, if you want to fly on PSLV in the PSLV, that heat shield envelope, some space is there. Within that you have to fit. So that type of constraints. Then availability of latest technology, orbital conditions, thermal power, satellite environment is very important. I will just explain the cost initiative. See, satellite environment, when you make a satellite, first you do the assembly in the clean room. Okay, you should have a very good clean room. In that clean room, all subsystems, okay, power, solar panels, payload, all will come one by one. You mount on the satellite, okay, and then testing. So clean room, and after assembly, then what happens? The satellite will be subjected to vibration test, acoustic test, okay, and thermo vacuum test. Because before launch itself, we want to verify. For example, as I said, during launch, there will be a lot of vibration. So whether the satellite will withstand or not, that we have to. Similarly, acoustic noise, big loud noise, acoustic noise will be there. So that also the satellite will be subjected. And thermo vacuum in the orbit, it will be both vacuum will be there and thermal conditions. This we simulate. And then once the satellite is ready for launch, you transport it to the launch. For example, in our case, we go to Sriharikota from Bangalore. So on the way, we take it by road, it will undergo a little bit of vibrations. Then launch phase, once just take off, lift off, rocket takes off, there will be a random vibration and acoustic noise. Then after, whenever there is a stage separation, first stage, second stage, PSLV, there will be a sine vibration. And finally, when the satellite is ejected into the orbit, final stage, satellite is thrown into its orbit, there will be a shock actually, because the pyrocutter will be fired. So there will be a shock on the satellite. Then in orbit, shock means mechanical shock, of course. In orbit, you have very hard vacuum will be there in the orbit. Temperature will be at 4 degree Kelvin, okay, minus 269 degrees centigrade. Then high energy radiation. Then there are some areas, particularly called South Atlantic anomaly, okay, and you see, in these areas, very high energy radiations will be coming, and they are impinging on the satellite. Solar flares, plasma, ultraviolet radiation, then small particle like micrometeoroids, space debris. Okay, all these things may affect the satellite. So there is a software available free for the ESA. Okay, you can do the modeling, simulations and all you can do with this software. Coming to the selection of materials, you cannot use any material in satellite construction, for example. There are some criteria is there. See, for in terms of mechanical materials like aluminum or whatever metals you use, the criteria should be high strength to mass ratio. Okay? That is very important. Mass should be lighter and strength should be high. That's why mostly some of the materials like titanium, okay, stainless steel, some non-magnetic, they are all used. Then a low quotient of thermal expansion, alpha should be very low. Low outgassing materials, that is you use some paint or grease, that type of things. The total mass loss should be less than 1%, and volatile condensable mass should be 0.1%. Okay? That means in the vacuum, they will give out some vapors. So these are all the specifications. Then corrosion resistance, radiation, electronic components when you are using, they should withstand the radiation. Okay. And some of the lubricants, whatever oils for use for wheels, reaction wheels, momentum wheels, okay, they should have low vapor pressure and low volatility. Now coming to the systems, this just I'll touch upon the what are the systems in a satellite, okay, and what is their function. Maybe later, I hope Dr. Agarwal will arrange separate lectures for each. So, as I mentioned, the structure is mechanical structure. That its function is accommodation of the payload and all subsystems. Okay, they should be put. It has to withstand the launch vehicle loads, optimal stiffness to mass ratio, alignment stability, all sensors, payloads, and all. They should not change their mechanical stiffness. I mean position after vibration, thermal and electrical conductive paths, and accessibility. Thermal control, of course, it depends on the orbit and payload. Particularly, of course, in communication satellites, high power dissipation and low thermal inertia will be there. See, there will be a lot of deployment mechanisms. Normally, in bigger satellites, in small satellites, they may not be there. But in big satellites, see, solar arrays, for example, solar array will be folded in the launch. Once it is put into the orbit satellite, the solar array will open out, okay, and antennas also, big antennas, they are folded in launch and deployed in the orbit. So some of this, like latch up shock, once it deploys, it has to withstand the designs, etc. And see, most of these deployments are single shot operation. Once the solar panel, one after launch, after separation from the rocket, this event will happen. By any chance, if it doesn't deploy solar array, that's it. That mission will fail. So it's mission critical. All these deployments are mission critical. Coming to satellite power systems, it will consist of three elements basically: solar array, battery, and electronics. Solar array, they use high efficiency solar cells. Okay. Earlier we were using silicon cells. Now gallium arsenide, indium gallium arsenide, okay, different types of cells are coming. Okay. So main important thing is the efficiency. They should have very high efficiency to convert light energy to electrical energy. To start with, we were using the silicon cells with about 18%. Today, almost more than 30-35% type of efficiencies are available, and they are put in serial and parallel arrangement, okay, to develop the voltage and current. Then in some satellites, solar array drive, okay, it has to continuously see the sun to generate power. So it will be the whole solar array will be rotated actually with a motor. Then coming to battery, number of charge discharge, as I told, particularly LEO satellites, whenever it goes into eclipse in the dark, okay, then there is no sunlight, there is no solar power generation. So only battery will support the satellite bus. And of course, these are all other parameters. Power electronics, what it does is, the solar array generates the electrical power. So that power is controlled, okay, regulated within voltage, whatever voltage is there, without much fluctuations, it will regulate it, and it will distribute, okay, on various lines. It will distribute to the subsystems. Voltage regulation, distribution of power lines, okay, and user DC to DC converters, etc. And there will be some protection mechanisms. Power lines, any power line will have a fuse. If some shorting is there in that subsystem, the fuse will blow. So the whole satellite will not. Then coming to the telemetry, telecommand, and command. Okay, this is a TTC baseband. Here the telemetry, what it does is monitoring of satellite housekeeping data parameters of all subsystems. Okay, like voltage, temperature, whether the system is on or off status, selection status, etc. All this will be monitored, and the data will be sent to the ground. That is telemetry. Telecommand is remote operation by uplinking command signals from ground. You want to switch on payload, you want to turn the satellite to some other direction. Okay, whatever you want to do operation on the satellite, you have to send a command. Tracking is location of satellite's position in orbit and its velocity by sending RF signals or using GPS receivers. Okay. That is when the satellite is going in the orbit. As I mentioned earlier, no. For example, tomorrow you want to point out the antenna. Tomorrow morning satellite in the Hyderabad station. You have to tell them which direction you have to point. So for that, you should have a knowledge of satellite in the orbit, where it is there and what velocity is going on. So that is determined by tracking. 1 meter, let me have water, some water. That is this is the baseband level, okay, digital level. Then you modulate it on the RF system, TTC RF system. So RF carrier waves modulated with telemetry and telecommand signals are transmitted through downlink and uplink. Telemetry is satellite to ground, it is downlink. Telecommand is ground to satellite, it is called uplink. So different tones are uplinked for, this is for ranging actually, of course, it is a more. And in addition to that, see, whatever I told, whatever camera, payload data, suppose you have taken some pictures, earth images you have taken, so that the image is converted to digital data, and the digital data is transmitted to the ground station through this RF link again. Suppose, of course, sometimes, for example, our satellite, Indian satellite, is taking images for some other country, let us say. That time we will not transmit it. We will have an onboard solid state recorder. We will record the data in the solid state recorder and later transmit it. Of course, onboard computer main functions are, this is the heart of the system actually, attitude control, okay, then housekeeping, telemetry, data acquisition, formatting, telecommand, signal processing, sensors processing, thermal management. Of course, OBC is designed with a firmware with a microprocessor or microcontroller, FPGA based, and some either maybe built-in memories or extra memories. And you should use a standard bus protocol like MIL53B or I2C type of thing. Then software features error detection, correction, single event upset, okay, that is because of radiation. And then you should have onboard autonomy, software patch up linking. Any problem in the software, you should be able to correct it from ground. You send one more uplink, one patch and correct it. And of course, normally the control software, everything is written in ADA or C++ language. Then onboard computer testing, you see Dr. Malik explained, okay, with all interface simulators like hardware in loop simulation, then onboard software in loop simulation, OS, etc. This is then coming to ADCS or AOCS, whatever it is. It's a closed loop. Of course, this was already, I think, explained. Okay, but the basic satellite orientation, okay, target. You want to orient the, as I mentioned, for example, camera for an image. You want to orient to the earth. Very precise pointing is required. But because of some disturbance or something, the satellite will be looking away. Then that will be measured by the sensor. Okay, that error, that roll, pitch, yaw, theta, phi, psi. That information will be compared with the reference actually, what we want actually. So there is a error. This is where I told whether it is a positive error or negative error. That will be given input to the control electronics. Control electronics will generate signal to the actuators. It will either increase the speed of wheel or pass a current through the torquer, magnetic torquer, and correct it, bring it back to the original condition. It will be sensed by this one. Again, this is a continuous loop. Of course, this is error. One is attitude error, other one is rate. The satellite will be slowly drifting. Okay, that drift will be also measured by gyroscopes, and that error input also will be given. Coming to sensors, attitude sensors, they measure the attitude with respect to celestial bodies like Earth, Sun, stars, okay, also Earth's magnetic field, magnetometer. Okay. So normally these sensors are mounted on the satellite in different orientations. So they see that, for example, let us say Earth sensor, okay, there will be a scanning sensor. That sensor will be scanning the Earth horizon. And nominally, suppose the satellite is errors are 0. So you will get some signal, your expected signal. So anything other than that, if there is an error, that signal will be different. So you measure that and give it to the control system. Similarly, that reference can be Earth or Sun. See, normally star sensors are very highly accurate because stars are very small. Okay, so you can little movement also in the satellite. You can sense it with the stars compared to Sun and Earth. Then gyroscope measures satellite body rate. Okay, in the inertial reference frame. Of course, other than attitude sensors in the satellite, there will be others non-attitude like temperature sensors. Okay, different types of temperature sensors to measure the subsystem temperatures. And the pressure sensor, suppose you have the control, this one, propulsion system, let us say, with thrusters. Okay, there will be a tank, fuel tank will be there. From the fuel tank, the fuel will flow to the thrusters. So what is the pressure? It is the tanks are highly pressurized, and as you use the fuel for mission time, then slowly that fuel will deplete and pressure will come down. So the propulsion system, that is for momentum dumping of wheels and orbit maintenance. Normally, monopropellant hydrogen based thrusters are used for LEO satellites. Okay, and thrusters and fuel tank depends on mission requirements. Nowadays, of course, this electric propulsion, this uses chemicals actually. Okay, some chemical items, they are very highly toxic and so they are going for electric propulsion. The advantages are less mass and size, small thrusters, but it consumes a lot of power. Okay, electric thrusters consume a lot of power. That is one disadvantage, but there are some advantages. Then actuators, as of course it was explained, maybe magnetic torquers. You have copper coils are wound on a core, and when you pass current over the coil, it generates electromagnetic field. That electromagnetic field will interact with Earth's magnetic field, and it will rotate the satellite. Okay. And other than torquers, wheels, reaction wheels, Mr. Malik has explained. It can be a 3 wheels or 4 wheels rotating at some high speed, and the speed will be changed depending on the error. Okay. See, suppose if they are rotating in clockwise direction, okay, then if the error is also clockwise, then they will start rotating anti-clockwise. See, the rotation of the wheel and error, you have to correct the opposite direction. And control moment gyroscopes also type of wheel. They are fixed on gimbals actually. So here actually this is a principle wise it is opposite to gyro. Gyro measures the rate. Here you give the rate, okay, so that it will orient the that satellite orientation by changing the gimbal direction. It will give a torque to the satellite. So these are all the subsystems. Then most important subsystem, of course, it is not a hardware, but one entity. An entity in satellite is a product assurance, quality assurance. We call it quality assurance or product assurance, whatever it is. So this is the importance of this is to see that quality, whatever you are making, either hardware design onwards, you are starting fabrication, testing, both hardware and software development. Okay, so there will be a set of personnel who will be identified under this role, PS role. Their job is to watch whether things are going on correctly or not. That is their important job. Product assurance team shall have independent authority. Okay, they will not be budged by any pressure or anything. If there is a problem, they will say there is a problem. I will not clear this. You please correct it and again bring it back, like type of thing. So they do, of course, lot of analysis, failure mode analysis. Manufacturing time, they have to do inspection, audit process qualification. Then once the systems are ready, they will do test and evaluation, calibration, and any non-conformance, any deviation is there that they will report. That has to be discussed in an expert committee. It has to be resolved. Then assembly integration testing phase. Okay. They monitor all the tests, what is going on. Because most important thing is any single point failure shall not jeopardize the mission. Suppose you have made a satellite. One simple one somewhere one small component, one resistor or capacitor, it fails. So it should not happen that the whole mission fails. Okay? That type of design they have first of all designer has to take care. Even if he misses, project PA fellow should point out this is the problem. There is a problem in this circuit. Because satellite once in its orbit cannot be repaired. That is the main thing. Satellites, if anything fails in orbit, that's it. That is the end of it. So you have to take maximum care on the ground only. I think that's all. The main things are not. So just for your interest, I can show some of the things. For example, these are the for making a satellite. What type of infrastructure you want? Okay. As I mentioned, clean room. You have a 1 lakh class. Humidity should be controlled to 55 plus minus 5 temperature. Then ESD, electrostatic discharge protection, is very very important. If you just come out from outside, enter the clean room, okay, and you will be your body and the clothes will be electrostatically charged actually. So if you touch any part on the satellite, it will get electrostatic discharge. So that should be very very careful. There are of course methods. Then mechanical fabrication details, all those things. If this is a clean room, for example, the satellite is assembled here. These people are wearing okay, that ESD protection type of things. And you have to monitor the dust particles inside the clean room. Once in a while, you have to monitor the dust particle contamination control. Then electronic fabrication facility. Okay. This is a type of soldering, etc. Mechanical fabrication facility machines. Then you also need some test facilities for like chambers. You have to keep the electronics in the chamber and then expose it to hot and cold. Okay, some temperature limits will be specified. Within the temperature limits, you have to do cycling. This is a thermo vacuum test. That is only thermal cycling. The whole satellite is put in this chamber. It's a big chamber, and this lid is closed, and you evacuate the whole chamber and test it. Okay, some temperature ranges, whatever is required. This is vibration. Okay, satellite is put on a vibration, and electrodynamic shaker will be there. So this will be vibrated in this direction. This is the z-axis, vertical, and horizontal. You turn the table and mount the system or satellite on this, and vibrate horizontal directions. And this is acoustic, as I mentioned. The whole satellite is kept in a big chamber, huge chamber, and very high decibel level noise will be sent to the satellite. Particularly the solar cells and all should not break. Okay. So this is to simulate the launch. This is for radiation, RF. The radiation. You want to radiate from the antenna. In clean room, just like that you cannot do because it is hazardous to the humans. So they put all around absorbers. The radiation will be RF radiation will be absorbed, and they make measurements. That's it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, please?
Anyone? Any questions you have?
Sir, are there any quality standards for satellite, like ISO standard for nut bolt?
Yes. There are standards. Both earlier to start with, we were following ESA, that is European Space Agency, and NASA standards. Later, with our own experience, ISRO has evolved its own standards. Okay, ISRO, we call ISREL, ISRO reliability. There are a lot of documents are available. Of course, they are not available in public domain, but for specific things they will supply. So standards are there for mechanical as well as electrical subsystems.
Thank
For
you, sir.
example, for electronic components, okay, like ICs, resistors, capacitors, inductor, okay, all components. When you buy them, they have to undergo some testing. So those tests are specified with respect to military standards. MIL, we call it MIL standard. So number will be there. Some number will be there. So the manufacturer of those components, they have to test those components to that standards and then only supply.
Understood, sir.
Yeah. Anything? Any more questions? Ask freely. Don't have any inhibitions or anything. Whatever you feel.
I guess there will be no other questions, sir. Thank you for.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. We'll be continuing next class, probably, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and patience, sir. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Okay. You will send me the date, no? When is my next topic?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Ah,
sir.
but preferably one day before, if you just send me
Definitely, sir.
that will be better. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh.